Hi, my name is Sam, and I'm doing my reflection for ECS 300 in regards to the field experience. And so the first question is, what have you learned about your students? And I think the one main thing I've really learned is that I think I went into the field experience being a little bit scared of them, or thinking that my mistakes were going to prove to them that I was a bad teacher. And I think the opposite, truly the opposite happens in those situations. I think one of two things happens. One, the student, if you make a mistake and they catch it, they almost feel a sense of responsibility, or they feel like they're important, or a sense of pride that they remembered something you forgot, like a name on top of a paper or some kind of date or something. They feel almost responsible that they remembered it and you didn't. And so I think that's always a good thing for students to feel that way. And two, that they almost see you as a human and not necessarily like you're a perfect person that never makes mistakes and you're above them. And I think that they see you as a human and someone that is respected and proves that learning is about making mistakes. And the process of learning includes making those mistakes and not feeling bad for them, but just working together in the classroom for a common goal. So I think that was one of my misconceptions. And one of the things the students really taught me was that making mistakes is perfectly fine, and the students don't think anything less of you for it. And I think me teaching for the very first time, this was a huge fear of mine, that they were just gonna think I was this awful teacher that didn't know what she was doing, but they really just welcomed me into the classroom, and I was very, very thankful for that. So that's one thing that I learned about them. And also, in terms of having an open classroom environment, I think that has to do with the group of students as well. Our co-op was a very, very great teacher. And that's totally reflected in how the students acted and behaved. And I think a good classroom environment really does start with the students and how willing they are to create that classroom environment together. And I think, as we've said in class, it all starts in September, when those first couple days of rules and regulations and routines are kind of set out. And I think the students really taught me that they are part of that process. It does not take a good teacher, or it does take a good teacher, but it takes great students as well to have that great classroom environment. And it's not solely based on how good the teacher is necessarily. It's a community effort. And so that's another thing the students taught me, because while they are a great group of students and they did challenge us in classroom management, absolutely, inside their thoughts about the world and just their insight about different areas of culture really surprised me, and I was really happy to be able to be a part of that and see that. So, two, what is something I learned about lesson planning? I suck at time management. That's what I learned, and that's an area I really need to watch when I'm doing my lessons. And so that was kind of an area of weakness. I learned that I need to put a little more emphasis on when it comes to lesson planning. And also that everything gets easier. The more you do it, lesson plans are a skill just like anything else that get easier with time. What did I learn about my teaching? I think one thing I learned, and it's kind of not a negative thing, but an odd thing, is that you have to kind of have two faces when you're a teacher. You have to have your normal teaching face where you teach the students and they learn things and you're a nice person, and then you have to have that side of you that you let them know you're serious. And whether that is, for some people, yelling at their students, I'm not sure how much I agree with yelling, or I think it has to be a really, really intense situation for there to be yelling involved, but you have to have a strict tone that you use with them when you are meaning business. And so I think you need to kind of have that two-sided teacher face when it comes to getting your students to really take you seriously as a teacher. As far as my personal teaching this semester is, like I said before, you can make mistakes and it is okay to make mistakes. And for the most part, I'm not sure if it was because I was in such a great field group and the students were just excellent, but the students, it was not a sense of ridicule at all. They really just did accept us for making our mistakes, and just they knew we were learning. It was totally out in the open. We were brand new teachers. This was our first lesson. They knew that. And so maybe that just open environment really invited them to welcome us as teachers. So professional growth. As far as the professional development targets, really I focused the professional development on the previous errors I made in my lesson. So anything that didn't go as planned the lesson before, I would focus on in my next lesson. And that's pretty much how I did my professional development all the way through. is if I made, like time management, if I made an error with that, it would be my goal for next week. If I noticed that some students weren't talking as much, that would be my goal for next week. And so anything that I felt was strongly noticeable or that I felt I was weaker in, I would make a goal for next week. Next steps for the upcoming semesters. What do I have here? I'm excited. A couple things I'm excited for are unit planning. I've heard a lot of stuff about the challenges from going to lesson planning to unit planning. And so I'm not sure if that should be in the next couple semesters. And I'm excited to do that in the semesters leading up to pre-internship and internship, as well as learning kind of the terminology. Like, I think I always did put an emphasis of putting things like differentiation in my lesson plans, but until this semester I didn't really know what that term was, or I knew I was having it there, but I didn't know what exactly it meant. So I'm looking forward to knowing that terminology a bit better and being able to kind of execute to others, hey, this is what's in my lesson plan, it's differentiation, it's inclusive learning, all of those terms I'll be able to articulate a lot better if I actually know what they are, and not just, hey, I find this value important. Things I learned along the way. We had an array of subjects that we taught. It definitely wasn't just our majors. And so, for instance, in gym, classroom management was so huge, and I think the majority of my classroom management learning happened in those couple times I taught gym, because it's just such an unorganized classroom environment where the kids are very much free to kind of not really do what they want to do, but it's a much more unstructured class setting. And so I learned a lot of classroom management strategies through those 1 or 2 lessons that I taught. Science, I learned how to deal with questions. That was my big moment for that one. The students had lots of tangents, lots of questions, and for me to kind of shut them down was something that I wasn't really expecting to do. I didn't expect them to be that vocal or be that into the lesson that I would have to kind of ask them to stop in as best of a most professional way as I possibly could. And finally in English, I had my first independent learning independent working, where I was just there to kind of supervise and they were working by themselves. And that was scary for me just because I didn't know if they would work silently for me or if they would take it as a bit of a joke. But I think because it was among the last couple classes that we were together, maybe they had built that respect for me, didn't really think much of a silent work period as me being kind of like a substitute teacher figure that they don't have respect for or relationship with. So the independent working went really well, and that was something that I was worried for, definitely. Summary about the way my thinking has changed. I think I've kind of touched on bits and pieces of it throughout this video. Basically, to sum it up, don't be scared to make mistakes because the students will not think anything less of you for it. Be a two-sided teacher. Have that flip phase where you turn into a bit of a monster, to say the least, where you flip on them, and sometimes they just need that little, whoa, she's serious, to really take you seriously as a teacher. And I think every teacher needs that little bit of seriousness in their voice and their tone. Also, one of the most important things I learned is that sometimes classroom discussion trumps the lesson altogether. Sometimes if you're on a really good topic, the kids are talking, they're into what you're saying, you're talking about a world issue, put your lesson aside, place it for a different day. Teaching is all about being flexible, and I think that that's something that I needed to embrace and learn, and instead of just always meeting my objectives and outcomes in one day, maybe just take 2 days to do it instead, and indulge in these classroom discussions a bit, hear what they have to say about different topics and different discussions. And I have found that even though that kind of wrecked my time management throughout the thing, and how I definitely didn't meet my target that week for that situation, but the classroom discussion was great, and I don't think that I failed in any way because of it, because the classroom was super engaged in what was going on. So also, regarding the goals I had made previously, one of them was to know the names of everyone in the class, as well as kind of get to know their interests and things that they liked. This was so much easier than I thought it was going to be, and I think from ECS 100, where you're just sitting there kind of observing, to this semester when you're actually being interactive with the students, it makes a huge difference in how much you get to know them. And that was really, really evident. And by week 3, we knew their names, and we're kind of gearing lessons towards the things they were interested in, and soccer and football, and one of the boys is the top wrestler in Regina and things like that. Another boy really likes bacon. He's got a weird obsession with bacon. So we were kind of able to like draw those little details into our lessons and really just engage them that way. So a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Two, what was my other goal? To take risks and push the limits. And I think I did do that to a certain degree. The last 2 times I was in the field is when I taught English, which is my thing. So it wasn't necessarily a kind of a curve up. Like, I think we were challenged very much at the beginning, being outside our comfort zones, and near the end was when we were really in our comfort zones. And so did we take risks and was I challenged? Absolutely. But near the end is when I was really starting to feel comfortable and in my groove. So multiple intelligence theory. This is something that's always been really strong to me. It's always been in my teaching philosophy ever since first semester. And I didn't realize that the lesson plan had a specific spot for the multiple intelligences, so this ended up being a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I think that our classroom was very, it was very appropriate to have multiple intelligences in this classroom because there was such a diverse array of different learning types, and I think that's great. So it was very easy to kind of tie interests and tie different learning types into our lessons that way. So that is all I have. It's been a great semester, and I thank our school so much for having us and our co-op teacher, and we have the best group of students. So I can't wait for the upcoming semesters and the years to come, as I've enjoyed this year so much and our students. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.